Hello Warhammer YouTubers, it's Hooves of Doom, and I just wanted to make a video today about Games Workshop's big announcement. I was supposed to do some schoolwork and stuff today, but all that has been basically thrown out the window for at least the morning, because there's quite the commotion online. And all of this began yesterday with the Age of Sigmar Facebook group posting a teaser about big news coming to the very next day, and that it would change how people play Age of Sigmar from here on out. So today, early this morning, they launched or unveiled their big news. And that is, coming this summer, 3 ways to play. That is open play, narrative play, and matched play. Now, open play is collect your forces and battle. Play with any army on any board with any number of players. Narrative play is recreate the great battles of the age. Create a campaign that tells your story within the mortal realms. And then match play, balanced and tactically challenging, designed for tournaments and competitive games, brackets. That's right, points and all. And they wrote a few extra notes here as well. And so that's right, guys. As of this summer, you'll have your pick of 3 great ways to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar. We couldn't be more excited, and we are certain that you'll love it too. We'll have more details for you soon. For now, open play is probably the most similar to the way you play now, but there are new rules on the way to give you even more freedom, including the option for huge multiplayer battles. Narrative play, as you might expect, recreating the great stories and epic encounters from the Age of Sigmar to help you forge your own stories within the mortal realms. There are also some really cool campaign rules and tools on the way as well. And finally, match play is something we know a lot of you have been keen to see. We've put these rules together, and this is important, in association with some of the world's biggest tournament organizers to create a new standard for balanced competitive play. And yes, it includes point values. And the last 4 words were, "Okay, Internet, go nuts." And that's basically what happened. Now, it's quite interesting, clearly. It really does shake some things up. So the time frame of this is this summer. My speculation, the beginning of summer is June 21st, so it's a little ways away. I would suspect it would be something around the time of the original launch of Age of Sigmar, which would be July 4th. I'm not going to say it's that exact date, but it makes sense. It would coincide with the 1-year anniversary of sorts. Now, many of us in the Warhammer YouTuber community, especially Vince Venturella, has been talking about how the simplicity of Age of Sigmar makes it really easy to build on top of it. So in some sense, I think that this is basically Age of Sigmar 2.0. And I think that we're going to see maybe a rehash of the rules, maybe a bigger book. There's talk now of a new starter set coming out, etc., etc. There are some criticisms, obviously, especially for the last point, match play. Now, it might seem strange to many people. It depends on where you are. Age of Sigmar seems to be fairly successful in the UK. There are certainly areas of the United States where it seems to be doing fairly well. And there's areas of the United States that it's not doing well. A number of the traditional tournament circuits for Warhammer Fantasy Battle are not covering Age of Sigmar. But there have been some tournaments at the recent conventions. There have been Age of Sigmar groups that are quite healthy, and I would say in general, if you read a lot of the comments, there's a lot of new players coming into the game over the past year. But that's just it. So far, we've been playing with open play. We've been kind of experimenting with the idea of not using points in a war game. To be honest, it's had its ups and downs. There's lots of times when I don't think it matters. Most of the games that I've played have been fairly competitive, and I'm more leaning towards having a game that's competitive than balanced. That's always been my key, and certainly the battle plans, the scenarios, you don't need balance in order to be successful in that regard. But I definitely see that a lot of people want those points, and there've been a number of rule comps right from the very beginning, and people have been using those comps fairly regularly, even myself. So even though the game doesn't have a lot of structure, the community has imposed some sort of structure on it. Now, I think it's great that they're still having the option for open and narrative play. I'm exploring narrative play right now with my latest game. We're going through, we're playing the game, and we're making it into a story, and I'll probably make a video of that. I have a couple battle reports before that, but it will come out eventually. But my point is, once you open this floodgate, once you make it official, it's very difficult to move away from it. One of the things I like about Age of Sigmar is that all the comps were unofficial, so play with them as you want, but the minute it becomes official, I think most people are going to lean towards that system. Certainly, open play is still there, but I would also point out that in 40k, if you look at how you design an army in 40k, the rules specifically say you don't have to use points. But how many 40k players take that option? Very few. So the fear in my mind would be, and the people that have loved Age of Sigmar over the past year, definitely that's kind of a concern. That said, it probably will draw in a lot of new players. So the reality is that even though we didn't have points, a lot of us were using some sort of comped points. Now, whether or not you're using pools or wounds, it's all some sort of point system. It's not the same point system as we've been using for the last X number of years in Warhammer Fantasy Battle and 40k. I don't think we're going to see that specific point value the way that we were used to it, but I'll talk about that in a bit. So some people have been arguing that, or mentioned that this is in some sense GW caving to the demand. And it's funny, when Age of Sigmar first launched, they made a few public statements to their investors that they weren't going to give in to so some of the more louder but small members of the community that were making a lot of noise. They seemed to kind of indicate that that wasn't a large group of people. And I don't know if there has been a massive amount of demand, of vocal demand, because as I said, there were plenty of comp systems out there that do offer the point systems, and there are plenty of successful tournaments for Age of Sigmar. So, but certainly, as I said, most people are using those comp systems, so it kind of makes sense. And as a business, whatever they can do to broaden their umbrella and bring more people in, the better. My hope is that the open play, narrative play will be successful alongside matched play. So, Games Workshop's increasing close interaction with the community essentially has a cost, insofar as they might actually listen to what the community wants. Now, I just made a video not long ago about the rough draft of the FAQ, and I was a little bit critical of the FAQ in some sense. It makes a little bit more sense, I think, in a matched play than it does in open play. What's the point of clarifying rules if there's no structure or points? But it is amazing that this came out so soon thereafter. Now, what I've always been arguing, and I'm not the only one in the Warhammer YouTuber community, but I've always thought, GW is going to release Age of Sigmar. They're going to let us play around with it for the first year, and then figure out what works and what doesn't, and come in and amend or support or whatever they need to do to support what is already existing. So one of the things I thought that they would do is perhaps adopt one of these comps. It's almost like at my university years ago, they were doing some landscaping, and they wanted to put down some paths. Now, one of the best ways you can do that, rather than formally plan it out and just put paths, because people walk where they want to walk, and so they inevitably don't go walk exactly on concrete paths that are on right angles, right? People go over corners, they cut corners, they walk across areas that are grass just to kind of get to A or B as fast as possible. Some people, when they go into that business, they wait to see where people are going and then make the path there. This is almost the same concept. It's Games Workshop coming in, seeing what's working and adopting that, perhaps looking at what doesn't work and making some changes. So, as I said, they've indicated that they've been working with some of the best tournament organizers. If you've been keeping up to date on what's going on Facebook, Games Workshop, we recently covered the South Coast GT in England, and they were there throughout the entire event, posting pictures and doing some live blogging and things like this. That seems to be the direction they're going. That event was promoted by the Heelan Hammer, a podcast, and there seems to be. I know I also listened to a Bad Dice and a Face Hammer as well, and I know that they were at the event, and they also have some role in organizing the tournament as well. If I'm incorrect on that and you guys are listening, please let me know, but I believe that all three of those were in some sense involved. Heelan Hammer, though, as I understand, the South Coast GT was the main organizer. So, GW has indicated that they've been working with these tournament organizers, and on Twitter this morning, that coincided with the announcement from Games Workshop. There are a number of Twitter posts from these podcasts with them seem to be at the Games Workshop headquarters and having a game of Warhammer with Jervis Johnson of all people. So really cool. So you can check out their posts on Twitter. And but the biggest takeaway for me is, if you want to know what the matched play style could be like, I would suggest taking a look at the South Coast GT rules pack and pool pack. So this is, they used a number of pool choices, which is not points. So if you haven't used the pool choices before, it's essentially you take a war scroll. The war scroll has a minimum number of models per war scroll. That minimum number has an associated point. It's usually like 1 to 2, depending on the type of troops, right? Really good troops might be like 2.5 or 3. Monsters, depending on, they might range from say 2.5 to 3.5 pool choices. And there's some variation on how those pool choices essentially work. I've looked at a number of different documents that rank them differently, and I don't know if they multiply them by 10 or something. But in either case, your army is determined by choosing the different war scrolls in each of those war scrolls. So I don't think you're going to see, like, there's not going to be an individual point value per model or something like that. I think that's highly unlikely. The one thing that is a little bit concerning is that the South Coast GT did base-to-base measurement and imposed a standardization on base sizes, and they only allowed for round bases. Now, for many people that have been playing Age of Sigmar, a lot of people didn't want to rebase, or they've been rebasing on different base sizes, etc., etc. And I certainly have plenty of models that are still on squares, even though I've been rebasing the rounds. I'm one of the people that buys Games Workshop bases, so I've kind of maintained a level of consistency in size. If the model was on a 25mm square, I go to like a 28mm round, and so on and so forth. To me, I've been able to kind of do it fairly consistently. I'm not too worried about that, but I know there are a number of people in the community that are kind of annoyed by that if GW actually adopts that type of system. So I think it will be based on a pool system, this matched play, but it might not be a whole, complete adoption. We don't know for sure. There's possibly the chance that GW is not going to accept or promote every single aspect of the comp choice that was used at this South Coast GT. But pools are actually really great. Most of my games I've used the pool choice system. They're not 100% perfectly balanced, but Age of Sigmar doesn't really need it to be. There's a lot of highly randomized elements of Age of Sigmar, and every single unit is very, very killable by basically anything, so you don't need to really worry. It's not quite the same like in 40k, where if you have a vehicle versus a unit of troops that don't have an anti-tank weapon. They might be the same amount of points, but clearly one will always win in that case. Age of Sigmar, the most powerful creatures can be taken down by a large horde of random troops. So judging by the 3 announced systems and the history of comps thus far, I am really expecting the pool or point system, and I don't expect them to be on the War Scrolls. I think the way that comps have existed thus far, you have the War Scrolls from Games Workshop, you then apply the comp on top of that. That makes the most sense to me. I think that's why the matched play is a third option and not something that might be part of the rules, but you can kind of choose to do it or not. So my point is that Games Workshop will probably still have War Scrolls as they have always done, simply because it's so much easier to make the changes. One of the best things about the comps is that they're highly, if changes need to be made, they can do so very easily. So for the PDFs you get off the website, GW can update those very, very quickly. For instance, they made some mistakes on the Star Drake War Scroll, and they within a couple days, I think they put out like a corrected version. And the printed War Scrolls you find in the Grand Alliance books, those are really cheap War Scroll compendiums. The other potential avenue is that will the older armies be supported? Bretonnians, Tomb Kings. We've always been arguing that the War Scrolls are in some way immune to changes because the rules are inherently on the War Scroll and there's no point value. So you don't really need to worry about them going outdated as we once did in the past. Some people are saying, well, if you do match play, those maybe you can play your Bretonnians in open play, but not in matched play. The South Coast did support Tomb Kings and Bretonnians, to my knowledge. And Games Workshop has said that they will support any War Scroll compendium. I'm not really sure what that name is exactly referring to. So there's definitely some things that we need to figure out going forward. But the War Scrolls as they are fairly cheap and easy to make adjustments, and if this pool choice or point system, whatever they're actually coming up with, is a separate document, it's easy for them to make adjustments to that as well. So hopefully that will be in a digital format as well. But regardless, we'll know more in the future weeks and months, and I'm sure the next podcasts for Heel and Hammer and Bad Dice and Face Hammer will have plenty of listeners. Hopefully result in a more inclusive community. I truly do wish that all 3 of these play styles are very successful, and hopefully it allows for people to enjoy the game that they want to play however they want to play. So those are my thoughts on the big announcement. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.